how ecological modify really is actually, as well as exactly just what it has an effect on the world's potential. World temperature levels are actually climbing up, an outcome of individual activity, as well as ecological modify presently weakens each portion of individual life. Left behind unchecked, folks as well as attribute will certainly conflict horrendous warming, along with demolishing completely dry out spells, more famous sea amount climb as well as mass firing of types. Our teen experience an astounding examination, however there certainly are actually anticipated agreements. Exactly just what is actually ecological modifier? Setting is actually the traditional environment in a place over many years. Ecological modify is actually a modification in those typical conditions. The prompt ecological modify our team are actually currently viewing is actually caused through folks taking advantage of oil, fuel as well as coal for their properties, handling vegetations as well as move. At the aspect when these oil byproducts take in, they discharge ozone diminishing materials, mostly CO2. These gases catch the sun's strength as well as determine the planet's temp to go up. The world is actually presently all around 1.2 C hotter compared to it remained in the 19th 100 years, as well as just the amount of CO2 in the environment has actually ascended through 50%. Temp enhances ought to call rear to remain far from one of the absolute most horrible end results of ecological modifier, analysts state. They state an Earth-wide temp enhance ought to be actually maintained to 1.5 C through 2100. All the same, other than if additional relocate is actually launched, the world might as however hot through greater than 2 C just before this century's over. A record in 2021 due to the setting task tracker lot identified that the world was actually preparing out towards 2.4 C of warming just before the century's over. When it comes to absolutely nothing at all is actually ended up, analysts number an unsafe atmospheric deviation can outperform 4 C later, prompting damaging heatwaves, millions dropping their houses to increasing sea amounts as well as irreparable reduction of vegetation as well as animal types. Exactly just what is actually the impact of ecological modifier? Unbearable environment events are actually right now more phenomenal, jeopardizing lifestyles as well as vocations. Along with extra warming, a handful of locations can come to be distressing, as farmland changes into desert. In various places, the inverse is actually taking place, along with unbearable precipitation inducing remarkable swamping, as viewed as of behind time in China, Germany, Belgium as well as the Netherlands. People in more regrettable countries will certainly expertise one of the absolute most as they do not have actually the money to adapt to ecological modifier. Lots of homesteads in agricultural countries since right now should persevere via settings that are actually also warm as well as this are going to simply deteriorate. Our oceans as well as its own residing areas are actually furthermore under threat. The unequaled limit coral reef in Australia, for example, has actually proactively dropped part of its own reef's starting point all around 1995 due to hotter seas steered through ecological modifier. Strong blazes are actually becoming more constant as ecological modifier creates the bed of hot, completely dry out environment. On top of that, as icy ground softens in location like Siberia, ozone diminishing materials captured for an actually very long period of time will certainly be actually supplied into the sky, demolishing ecological modifier. In a hotter world, animals will certainly discover it more challenging to discover the meals as well as sprinkle they have to stay. For example, polar bears might vanish as the ice they depend upon liquefies away, as well as elephants will certainly fight to discover the 150-300 liters of sprinkle a time they require. Analysts recognize someplace all around 550 types can be dropped this very long period of time on the occasion that relocate isn't really produced. Just how may several locations of the Earth be actually influenced? Ecological modify has actually several influences in several locations of the world. A handful of locations will certainly warm and comfortable much more than others. Some will certainly have more precipitation as well as others will certainly challenge more completely dry out periods. On the off opportunity that temperature level climb up cannot be actually maintained interior 1.5 C. The UK as well as Europe will certainly be actually powerless versus swamping caused through shocking precipitation. Countries in the facility eastern will certainly conflict shocking heatwaves as well as farmland might head to leave. Isle nations in the Pacific. Completely dry out mean disorders are actually feasible in the western side US, while various locations will certainly observe more excessive tempests. Australia is actually possibly most likely to withstand frontiers of strength as well as completely dry out period. What is occurring with conditions? Countries concur ecological modify should be actually managed through cooperating, as well as in a landmark recognizing in Paris in 2015, they guaranteed to try to maintain an Earth-wide temperature level improved to 1.5 C. The UK is actually facilitating a ACME for world leaders, named COP26, in November, where countries will certainly lay out their carbon dioxide lower thinks about 2030. Several countries have actually vowed to come to internet absolutely no through 2050. This indicates reducing ozone hurting material emanations, having said that long as might fairly be actually anticipated, as well as offsetting staying discharges through engrossing an equivalent amount coming from the environment. Professionals concur that this is actually obtainable, having said that it will certainly need legislatures, institutions as well as individuals to turn out massive renovations. Exactly just what more exists to accomplish? Substantial modifications require to find coming from conditions as well as institutions. However, analysts claim a handful of little bit of modifications in our lifestyles may limit our result on the setting. Get much less trips. Stay car free or even make use of an electrical car. Acquisition power skillful products, like clothing washing machines, when they require supplanting. Modify coming from a gasoline warming structure to an electrical strength siphon. Guard your property. The COP26 all over the world setting end result that remained in Glasgow in November of in 2014 is actually deemed necessary, presuming that ecological modify is actually to become taken care of. Incredibly, almost 200 countries have actually been asked for their agreements to reduce outflows, as well as it might cue substantial modifications to our everyday existences.